Hey, what's going on, everybody? Great to see you out there on this Saturday. Hope we're all having a wonderful start to the weekend and getting really close now to Christmas. And with that, we've got a bit of a complicated forecast to discuss in today's video. We're going to start things off by talking about this Christmas storm setting up shop around kind of the Rockies right now, but slowly working east and will continue to bring those impacts east with it. And that will likely be followed up by a big time pattern change back to the snowy side of things through much of the East Coast and potentially kind of far south into the Southeast as well. Now, I'll preface this by saying we're still a long ways away, a lot of details to iron out here, but we're definitely going to break down that pattern and kind of discuss who I think has the best shot at getting some snow here to end out 2023 and to start the new year. Now, if you haven't already subscribed, definitely consider doing so. We're trying to get to 4,000 here, and we're very close. We only need about 40 more people. So, we're working our way there, and I think we can get there honestly by the end of today. Would not be out of the realm of possibility. So, again, definitely consider joining on board by hitting that subscribe button. And also, make sure to hit that bell for the latest notifications as I keep you updated on this pattern change to end out the rest of the year. And then, as usual, if you like the video, like it. And of course, if you're new to the channel, comment, let me know where you're watching from. And if you're a regular, of course, thank you for returning and let me know what you're seeing out there. Now, I am dressed up a little bit like the Grinch. I just realized that, so I do apologize, and hopefully you don't think I'm the Grinch by the end of this forecast video, but you very well may. I guess we'll just have to wait and see what I give you. Now, taking a look at satellite imagery out there, you'll notice so far things are quiet for a lot of folks, but we do have a couple different disturbances kind of rolling on through right now. We've got one piece of energy kind of up in the northeast, bringing some showers and even a little bit of snow showers for some folks. But the main piece of energy is still back here, kind of towards Arizona and New Mexico. And it's kind of two pieces of energy. There's that southern piece, and then there's another piece of energy up here towards the north. And eventually, these two are going to kind of combine over sections of Kansas, Nebraska, and Colorado going into tonight and tomorrow. And that's going to lead to a pretty impressive Christmas time snowstorm for a lot of folks. And of course, we'll break that down throughout this video. Now, taking a look at current watches, warnings, advisories, and just radar imagery in general, I'll go ahead and start with the middle of the country. All of these kind of gray boxes you see on your map, all of these are dense fog advisories. Very foggy out there for a big section of the country this morning. Now, hopefully by the time you're watching this, that fog will kind of dissipate a little bit going into this afternoon, but nonetheless, a very foggy morning. Now, for the East Coast, not really any watches or warnings or advisories, but we do have a lot of precipitation kind of sneaking on through here, through much of the Ohio River Valley and down even into the Tennessee River Valley, seeing some rain here on this Saturday. And this will continue to kind of work off towards the north and east throughout the day today. And we'll time that out here with Futurecast in just a second. Now, looking back west, this is where things are a little more interesting, if you will. Taking a look at those watches, warnings, and advisories. All of these kind of purple boxes on your map are winter weather advisories for some snow. And then these pink boxes are winter storm warnings, actually, for even higher amounts of snow down here into these higher elevations of Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico as this Christmas time storm continues to ramp up. Alrighty, now let's go ahead and time this out. I'm going to start west coast to east coast for you here, and then after that, we'll zoom it out and go a little bit further in the future of this storm system's life cycle. Then I'll give you some snowfall totals, and then we'll end the video off by discussing some of those long range projections and that potential for a return to the snowy side of things. Now, some folks are probably wondering why I'm talking about a return to the snowy side of things, because it's already snowing out there, and that will continue through much of this afternoon for again those higher elevations of the Rockies, all the way from Montana down towards Idaho, even into Utah, sections of eastern Arizona, up through New Mexico, and through Colorado and Wyoming as well, seeing a big section of some higher terrain snowfall. And that's why we have those winter weather advisories and even winter storm warnings for some folks. Now, another thing you will notice again this afternoon, notice this cyclogenesis beginning, or just the formation of low pressure at the surface here in eastern Colorado. That is going to continue to ramp up throughout the afternoon hours today. And by the time we're getting into this evening out here in mountain time, still seeing some of that snow in higher elevations, but also a lot of rain now getting pulled up from the Gulf as this low pressure kind of begins to strengthen that southerly flow here. And we're going to see a pretty rainy period from tonight into tomorrow for much of Texas and Oklahoma, and even back down towards Louisiana. Now, this is 7 o'clock tonight, you'll notice. We also do need to watch this line of storms right here. Could produce some strong to severe storms, not out of the questions by any stretch of the imagination here. Again, there through much of West Texas overnight tonight. Now, by the time we get into about midnight, 1 in the morning, the snow will begin to slowly taper off for a lot of mountain folks, but still ongoing through much of Wyoming and Colorado here. But ahead of it, again, the strong southerly flow is really beginning to ramp up. And you'll notice these kind of vertical shaped isobars here, meaning that we're getting that wind very strong in between them to really help advect that warm air northward. So I think tonight's going to be pretty rainy for a lot of folks from the high plains all the way down to the southern plains. Scattered rain for some folks, heavier, especially the further south you are, I think, towards kind of Oklahoma and Texas. Now, moving this ahead, by the time we're waking up tomorrow, though, you'll notice that cold air begins to kind of funnel into the backside of this storm system, and we're changing to a very heavy snow for our Christmas Eve morning through much of eastern Colorado, much of western Nebraska, and even into sections of Kansas. Now, at the same time, when you're waking up, if you're kind of here on the east side from eastern Texas all the way up towards Minneapolis, you're just dealing with some rain. So don't necessarily get your hopes too high for some of that Christmas time snow, as a lot of this is going to stay rain. Now, as we go throughout the afternoon of Christmas Eve, this low pressure slowly begins to work northward, at least this first piece. We're going to get a second piece to kind of form off to the south, and you'll notice that here in just a moment. But again, Christmas Eve afternoon, probably traveling, going to see some family. Expect some snow here from a big swath of Nebraska up through South Dakota, and even sections of extreme southeastern North Dakota and extreme western Minnesota getting in on that snow. But at the same time, still dealing with just rain from a pretty big corridor here from Louisiana all the way up the Mississippi River Valley into Minneapolis and even into northern Minnesota. And we'll take a better look at that here in a second as we move the map off towards the east. But you'll notice then going into tomorrow evening throughout Christmas Eve, we kind of get a secondary area of low pressure to form here, kind of near Arkansas, and watch how that rides up to the north here. And that is going to bring a reinforcement of precipitation combined with leftover cold air that's still funneling into the backside of the storm. Could get a secondary burst of snow here just in time for Christmas morning. So pretty festive storm this one is for a lot of folks here in the plains from the Dakotas all the way down even to sections of Kansas. All right, now talking about that severe weather a little bit, again, we do have a marginal risk up for much of West Texas from the Panhandle all the way down kind of towards the Rio Grande River. So definitely watching out for that. And the biggest threat would be some strong straight line winds. Can't rule out a brief isolated tornado, but really I think damaging winds are going to be the big concern going into tonight with that line of storms. All right, so now talking about the east, again, we've had some rain this morning going into this afternoon. That's going to continue, although it'll stay relatively scattered for most folks. I don't think widespread rain is too likely, but definitely some rain nonetheless from Arkansas all the way up the Ohio River through Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, and especially up here towards the Great Lakes, kind of near Lake Erie and Ontario here into sections of New York State. Now, I wouldn't be too surprised if some of this falls in the form of maybe some rain-snow mix or even a little bit of snow here in upstate New York this afternoon. But other than that, it just won't be super heavy precipitation. And you'll notice as we go into this evening, again, that transition as we still have cold air left over from this cold blast we had this week. Again, some of this could follow some snow, especially in western New York and into sections of Vermont and even Massachusetts during the afternoon today, and even during the evening. Could see some flurries make it as far east as Boston here during the overnight. So again, maybe a couple festive flakes. Just overall speaking, the threat will not really be there in terms of impacts or really any accumulation. But definitely pulling for you folks to see a couple Christmas flakes, even if it is kind of the super wee morning hours of Christmas Eve. Now, by the time we're actually waking up tomorrow morning, still dealing with some of that scattered rain throughout the Ohio River Valley. Nothing too different than what we're seeing right now. And again, some flakes could be mixing in here into the northeast, or maybe even a couple sleet pellets, not out of the question. But you'll notice here's that Christmas storm continuing to kind of get underway back towards the west during the early morning hours of Christmas Eve, as we had just discussed. Now, once we get into Christmas Eve afternoon, that's when the rain kind of begins to slowly start working east of the Mississippi River here in more widespread quantities. And look at all of this moisture coming out of the Gulf of Mexico, kind of beginning to ride off towards the north and east throughout Christmas Eve day and throughout the evening. Now, I'm going to freeze the frame here. This is 6 o'clock tomorrow evening, the 24th. So if you've got plans, I think most folks east of the Mississippi River will still be pretty dry for our Christmas Eve plans, any kind of family gatherings you have out there. But as we continue to move this ahead and go into the early morning hours of Christmas Day itself, that rain really begins to ramp up for a lot of folks. We're going to have a very soggy Christmas morning from a big stretch of kind of the southeast all the way up into sections of the Midwest. And as we move this further ahead into time, you'll notice this big shield of rain will only continue to slowly continue off towards the north and west, going past Christmas even a little bit. Alrighty, so let's zoom this out a little bit now and kind of time out the rest of the storm system throughout the week of Christmas itself and going towards the new year. So we're going to pick up where we left off here. This is early Christmas morning, and you'll notice, again, this is what we were just looking at, a big shield of rain kind of coming out of the Gulf up through the East Coast. Now, as we go into Christmas afternoon itself, expect that rain again to continue to take over, and I think Christmas Day is going to be quite a soggy one for a lot of folks here in the East Coast. Now, as we're dealing with that soggy weather there, still seeing some pretty impressive snowfall here on the backside through Nebraska, southern South Dakota, and maybe even getting into extreme west sections of Iowa at this point throughout Christmas Day. Now, as we go into Christmas evening, that snow's still breaking out there through the northern high plains, and we're still seeing very strong warm air and rain and precipitation continuing up the eastern half of the country. But I want you to notice this is when that pattern change also kind of begins to take hold for a lot of folks. Notice these blue lines here. This is not our freezing line, but our rain snow line, if you will. This is where the atmosphere hits freezing about a couple thousand feet above our heads. And look at this punch of cold air coming in on the backside. You can tell by this kind of arced shape of those blue lines. That tells me that cold air is funneling into this storm system, which means it's strengthening, but more importantly, we just have more cold air to work with. And as we move this ahead into the week of Christmas itself, still dealing with a very soggy first half of the week through much of the eastern half of the country, but look at all of this blue as that storm eventually occludes, just meaning cold air takes over the warm air. We've got a lot of cold air now diving pretty far south and troughing pretty well here into the eastern half of the country, going into later next week, closer towards New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Now, this is important for a couple reasons. One, we're still going to have precipitation left over, so I want you to notice this area of kind of rain and snow showers. As the storm occludes and loses some of its lift, we're still going to have light enough precipitation that we'll see some leftover snow showers likely through the middle and end of next week begin to work off east from the Midwest through the Ohio River Valley and even into the Northeast, and can't rule out some even enhanced lake effect snow here up through the lake regions and even down from the Appalachia chain from not New York, North Carolina up even towards New York as well, I guess. So again, this storm's going to start as a very warm storm, but then transition into a bit of a punch of cold air with some snow showers, and it will also set the stage for that big overall pattern change going into 2024. So what you're looking at right here, this is kind of the afternoon of this coming Thursday, December 28th, and again, notice these blue lines getting very far south here, indicating that cold air now coming back down out of Canada, and with that leftover precipitation here, could easily see some snow showers through a big chunk of the Midwest, Northeast, and even potentially the higher terrains of the Mid-Atlantic going into later this week. And that eventually, that cold air continues to work on in and continues to dive south going towards New Year's Eve, New Year's Day itself, and even the week after. So this overall idea is what's going to set the stage for that pattern change and the potential of some sort of snow here, maybe in the east, from the southeast, maybe the Ohio River Valley, maybe the Midwest, maybe the Northeast. Timing and exact locations still up in the air, but I think we've got a good shot at seeing some sort of wintry precipitation to end out the year and start 2024. Now, before we dive any more into that, though, let's go ahead and take a look at kind of how much snow we're expecting out of this big Christmas time storm. Something I like to start kind of these general parts of the video with is this map. It shows the winter storm impacts for the next 1 to 3 days. And you'll notice the folks that are going to have the most impacts kind of up here from South Dakota through Nebraska and down into eastern Colorado as well are going to be the places that see the most snowfall and therefore the most impacts. So now that we've looked at that map, let's go ahead and dive into some potential snowfall totals. All right, this is our latest National Weather Service blend of models. So again, this just kind of throws all of our models together and gives you an average of how much snow you can expect in your area. So I really think the bullseye from the storm is going to be over South Dakota and Nebraska, where half a foot to a foot of snow is not out of the question. Even I think 8 to 12 inches is going to be quite likely here in south central South Dakota. Now, surrounding areas kind of here from southern North Dakota into much of Minnesota, kind of into western Iowa, I think 3 to 5 inches, 1 to 3 inches is kind of a bit more of a safe bet. And as we get kind of down here into southern Nebraska, I think 3 to 5 inches is going to be a pretty likely scenario for a lot of folks. Moving this into the Midwest, again, as I talked about going into the middle of next week, the storm system will kind of transition to more of a lake effect system and have some scattered snow showers. So I think a dusting to an inch is going to be pretty likely for some folks, and isolated spots picking up more here from Ohio up through the Great Lakes regions, going again from the middle of next week towards the end. We'll definitely have isolated spots, though, that kind of pick up a little bit more here, kind of into the western shores of Michigan and into the UP, where we kind of enhance that lake effect snow a little bit more throughout many of these regions. All right, taking a look at the mid-Atlantic. Now, unfortunately, if you're watching from the lower terrains of the Carolinas, Virginia, Georgia, this Christmas storm isn't going to be your storm. However, stick around because, again, we'll talk about that pattern change where these areas might be a little more favored than we'll see through much of next week. Nonetheless, though, again, I think we're going to get some northwest flow event out of this storm system, likely not a super blockbuster storm out of any stretch of the imagination, but enough that it'll be noticeable in those higher terrains, likely above 3,000 to 3,500 feet, a couple inches of snow, not out of the question here in this part of the country. And also, maybe even down here into eastern Tennessee and eastern Kentucky, can't rule out a dusting as some snow showers may move on through later next week. Now, moving on up into the Northeast, I think the biggest winners here will be, again, kind of in these lake effect regions from Erie back down towards Cleveland and up towards kind of the Catskills and upstate New York, but can't rule out some snow showers even up towards Maine and surrounding areas of New England going towards, again, the middle and especially end of next week as the storm system slowly pulls off and moves back off kind of out into the Atlantic. All right, one more thing I'm going to talk about here before we get to that pattern change that I'm sure a lot of you have been waiting for are those temperatures. Again, this afternoon, unseasonably warm for just about the entire country, and that is going to continue even into our Christmas. This is Christmas Eve. We've got some folks up here into Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Illinois that are going to be 20 to 30 degrees above what they should be. So if you're normally sitting around 30 degrees for a high on Christmas Eve, it's going to be up near 60. So we're probably honestly going to get close to, if not breaking, a lot of Christmas Eve high temperature records for a lot of folks here up into the Midwest. Now, as we continue this later on into the week, those temperatures are going to continue to climb through much of the East Coast here, and even continuing in the Midwest from Florida all the way up through Maine, and then again back out towards Minnesota and Wisconsin. Now, if you're a fan of the cold, don't worry, don't fret, because here it comes. Again, as that storm system occludes, that cold air going to get wrapped around. By the time we're getting later on into next week, notice these blue colors taken back over. And again, this is that start of that pattern change going towards the end of next week. You'll notice these blues now much more prevalent from the plains through the southeast and even into the Ohio River Valley. Alrighty, now speaking of all of that change, let's go ahead and break it down a little bit more for you here to end out the video. So what I'm showing you here, and I show this every video, and I know I explain it every video, but we've got new viewers all the time, so it's important to recap here. This map shows our 500 millibar height anomaly, and if you ever hear a meteorologist or a weather enthusiast talking about millibars, heights, and all these fancy words, that basically just means how thin or thick is the atmosphere. As I'm sure many of us know, whenever we have, hot air, that tends to expand, meaning the atmosphere gets a little thicker. Whenever we have cold air, it begins to get a little more dense and therefore a little more shallow. So these blue colors on your map are showing a more shallow atmosphere, which generally means cooler and stormier weather. The reds on your map are showing warmer weather and a more expanded atmosphere, which generally means warmer weather and less active. So as I kind of move this ahead, this is kind of Christmas Day itself. Here's that, blue on the map that is kind of correlating very well with our Christmas storm that we've been talking about right over the heart of the country here. Now, as I move this ahead further into next week, as that cold air takes over, look at that blue expand. And going towards next Thursday and Friday, we've got a much larger area of some blue here, and also with it, very impressive troughing. Now, whenever I talk about troughing, again, that's just kind of indicating where we're seeing those red colors and where we're seeing those blue colors. So just to kind of draw this out for you, I'm going to draw a yellow line kind of across your map here and just explain it a little bit more for you. So again, you'll notice I just kind of drew where these black lines are, or these isobars, and kind of where they're dipping and where they're stretching upwards. So right here, this is a trough, this blue area that is kind of kinking downwards, if you will, indicating that cold air coming south. And this here is a ridge where those red lines kind of kink upwards, indicating that warmer air from the equator kind of flying northwards. So again, that's all the weather really is this balance of the warm weather near our equator and the cold weather near the poles kind of fighting for dominance over the planet and balancing each other out. And that's why we get these troughs and these ridges. Now, again, to get back to kind of the main point here, here's that big storm system. At this point, likely bringing just kind of some scattered snow showers through much of the Midwest and Ohio River Valley. But more importantly, what it's doing is it's establishing cold air. It's helping to bring that cold air, which is so important to actually getting a snowstorm through much of the East Coast. A lot of the times we need that cold air in place and then a storm system to kind of follow that cold air to get some of these winter storms. Now, again, this big trough is indicating a storm system, but there's also more kind of small embedded troughs I want you to notice here. And for example, I'm going to circle these two little areas on your map. You'll notice as I showed you that flow, there was a big trough here, but we can get smaller areas of that or short waves. In fact, you'll notice here's one little kink there, and then even kind of a kink here in the atmosphere. And anytime we see these kinks, that's conducive for precipitation to begin to develop, and that I think is likely to happen. Again, at this point, we've got the cold air kind of in place along much of the East Coast, and watch what happens with these little kinks. They're going to kind of dive southward and bring that precipitation with them. So moving this ahead, again, watch how they rotate around. Here's that one kink, that one short wave. Here's the other one. Again, both of these indicating areas that could help produce some precipitation or lift at the surface. And that combined with the cold air already in place, we could be in business for somebody here in the eastern half of the country during the last couple days of 2023. And even going beyond, notice how even more of these little blue kinks in the atmosphere kind of continue to swing on through throughout the first week of January and even further into 2024. Look at all of this dark blue and all of these areas of troughs and short waves taking over the eastern half of the country. And, you know, the latest GFS model keeps this going well into 2024 here. So that's something we'll definitely watch. This is easily, I'll say, the most conducive pattern for eastern snow we've seen this winter, and honestly probably better than we saw really at all last winter, as we know how much of a dud last winter was in the snow department. Now, showing this to you in terms of temperatures, again, it's going to be very warm for now, but as we go into the end of the year here, look at these blues taking over on your map, and going into 2024, those blues hang around, and this is our ensemble of the GFS members. So this isn't just one model, this is a bunch kind of thrown together, and they agree now, or at least, you know, later next week through at least the first week of January, we're in a relatively, if not more than relatively, conducive pattern for some snow here through much of the eastern half of the country. Alrighty, I know there's a lot of meteorological jargon, but I'm a bit of a nerd if you weren't aware at this point. Go ahead and let you in on that little secret. So I'm going to show you one more map, then I'm going to let you go and kind of enjoy the rest of your Saturday here. So this map is going to show the chance of at least an inch of snow falling within a 24-hour period. So obviously, as we're going through Christmas, we've got a big chance of that happening here through much of the Rockies and kind of here into the northern Great Plains, where that snow is likely to fall. Now, as I move this further ahead into time, you'll notice, again, going into the middle and latter part of next week, as that storm turns a little colder, as I talked about, the chance for some snow increases here through the Ohio River Valley, the Midwest, and the Northeast. But as I really move this ahead and that kind of cold air stays established for a while, I want you to notice what happens here. Going again later into this year and into the first week of January, these chances of snow, I know they're not very high, but just look at the general location that they're at. It kind of begins to set up shop a little bit further south through the Mid-Atlantic, the Tennessee River Valley, and even into kind of these surrounding southeastern states. Now, I'm not showing this to tell you it's going to snow January 4th, 2024, but what I am saying is the models are beginning to pick up on the general signal that there's a chance for a more snowy pattern to end out 2023 and throughout the first week of 2024. And I'll also preface this by saying you're going to see a lot of model runs on Twitter. In fact, last night we had some pretty crazy operational model runs within 10 days. But I'm not going to show that to you because, again, there's just so many pieces of energy that we need to forecast, and we know they're just flying around. It's better to just look at the overall pattern here where when we're in the 7 to 14 day time period. And I'm feeling very confident that we're in at least a pattern that is conducive enough to produce some snow. Now, again, locations, timing, all that will iron out as we get closer, but just kind of, keep an eye open here as we end out the year and start 2024. Alrighty, so I thought this was a pretty productive video, got a lot done, talked about a lot, and I'll make sure to have another video out for you tomorrow. Again, I talked about this a little bit at the start of yesterday's video, but I will be back in South Carolina for the next week, spending some time with family, but I'm still going to do my best, and I probably will get a video out every day, likely pretty early in the morning, just so I can get it over with. Not that I don't like making videos, but it's just going to be a nice quiet time to kind of record these things when I'm back home. So, just be aware of that as we go here throughout the next week, but I should be back in Charlotte kind of sometime during that first week of 2024. With that said, though, again, hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you have a great rest of your Saturday, and I'll see you all tomorrow.